So this lecture is all about aphasia. I've been doing research in this area for many years now, and I'm a speech pathologist by training. And what I hope to do is give you some insight into what aphasia is like and also why it's interesting to research. So in this first segment, we're going to be talking about what is aphasia. It's a disorder of language that's acquired as the result of brain damage, and there might be difficulties with speaking, writing, understanding speech, and understanding written text. There can also be problems with reading aloud or repeating what's said. So a large number of different possible problems. Most people with aphasia will have problems with more than one of these. And the important thing is that this is in people who have had previously normal language abilities. So as a result of brain damage, they have acquired a problem with language that they didn't have before. They may also have problems gesturing what they want to communicate. Some people do and others may not. Now, different people with aphasia have different degrees of difficulty, so it can be more or less severe, but also different combinations of problems. So some people might find speaking really hard and writing relatively easier. Others may be unable to write, but have fewer problems with speaking. Most people, however, have trouble finding the words they want to say. So they are unable to retrieve the right words at the right time. But importantly, their intellect is generally intact. They can go about their day-to-day lives, they can make decisions in the same way as they could before. Because it's brain damage, there may also be other problems. They may have problems with moving their speech muscles, which makes their speech somewhat slurred, and that's something called dysarthria. And they can have problems with planning, coordinating the muscle movements, even if the muscles themselves are not weak. And this is called apraxia of speech. So what causes aphasia? Essentially, it's damage to those areas of the brain that control language. And these are typically the temporoparietal regions of the left hemisphere. So the left side of the brain is where language is located in most people. Most people with aphasia have aphasia as a result of brain damage that's from stroke, so a blood clot or a bleed into the brain, which causes areas of the brain to die, from a cerebral hemorrhage, which may be inside the brain itself, as in stroke, or it may be in some of the layers of membranes round the brain, but causes pressure on the brain and again causes damage. It can also occur after traumatic brain injury, so when people hit their heads in a fall or in a car accident, from brain tumours in the language area or surgery to remove those tumours, from brain infections, and sometimes you can even get a transient aphasia during some migraines, if those migraines are centred on the areas of your brain that control language. But in migraine, it's important to realise that it's a temporary effect. It's not a lasting aphasia. Progressive aphasia is an aphasia which slowly gets worse over time. For most aphasias, they have the stroke and then the aphasia will slowly get better over time. Progressive aphasia is in a dementing illness, and with the brain slowly becoming more and more damaged over time with the progressive brain disease, their language problems will get worse and worse. Progressive aphasia can happen in Alzheimer's disease, where language is the first and the primary symptom before other cognitive problems occur. So what's it like? The easiest way for us to understand what it's like is to use the analogy of being in a foreign country, where you don't understand what people say and you don't speak the language to be able to express yourself. If you try and think what might happen in that situation and how you might communicate with people and how they might try and communicate with you and how you would feel, that can give you an idea of what it might be like to be aphasic. But of course, for you, you can always go home. The person with aphasia can't. They're stuck with it. So how might people react to you? They might shout. That's quite a common reaction when people don't seem to understand you, but it doesn't help. You know, you're not deaf. The person with aphasia isn't deaf. But both for you in a foreign country and the person with aphasia, if they repeated what they said, using the same words but saying it more slowly, that might help. People might try and write things down, and that might help a bit, might help you with identifying some of the key words, but if you've got problems understanding the language, it doesn't solve the basic problem if you don't know what those words mean. They might try asking you to write down what you want to say. And again, sometimes that might help. It might be that if your pronunciation's bad, it makes it clearer. But if you don't know the word to say it, you're going to make the same kinds of mistakes writing it down. So it's not a cure. People might also, they might point or gesture. And that will usually help you in a foreign country and people with aphasia to understand better. But again, there's a limit to what you can understand from people's gestures and how you can get across your message in gesture. The critical thing is, though, that you know exactly what you want, you just can't communicate it. So imagine how frustrated you will be. And the impact of this on the individual and the family of people with aphasia. Every aspect of life is affected. Communication is core to us as human beings. It's a bit of a cliche, but language is what sets us apart as a species. So if you don't have those language abilities to communicate, you can be socially isolated and excluded. So relationships can be very hard to maintain without a common language. You're likely to lose your job or to do a job at a much lower level, which can lead to financial hardship. There can be a loss of leisure opportunities, both because of your language problems, so understanding movies may be hard. If you're in a drama group before, that's going to be hard to be part of, but also even things like sporting activities may be hard. Yeah, because very often with stroke, there are physical problems. So weaknesses, a weakness down the right side of the body, a hemiplegia or hemiparesis. So leisure opportunities can be hard. There's a lack of access to information because information tends to be verbal or written, and you may have trouble understanding that. You find it hard to question if you don't understand. There's a loss of opportunities to participate, negotiate, choose. A real loss of confidence and bewilderment. Again, going back to that feeling of being in a foreign country. If you're not sure what people are saying, where things are, it can be very hard to continue negotiating your life. And understandably, there's anger and frustration. Some people with aphasia may not be aware of how much trouble they're having understanding and communicating, and they will be particularly frustrated at all these stupid people around them who aren't responding appropriately. For those who do have insight, a huge frustration and not being able to get the message across. And quite understandably, depression and grief. There's a grieving process for the person you once were. suddenly you find yourself this disabled person. And for many people who have prejudices about people, disabled people, it can be very hard to suddenly find yourself as one of these people. So what about the prognosis? Most people with aphasia show improvement over time, yeah? Unless they have a progressive aphasia. So the aphasia does get better. The most rapid improvement is in the first 3 months. That's when the most healing is going on in the brain. But we know that the brain can continue to reorganize and repair, and improvements can continue indefinitely. And aphasia can be treated. There are treatments that have been shown to be effective for all of the different types of language problems. But there's no magic bullet. By saying it can be treated, it means we can improve the problem. We can lessen the problem. It isn't that we can wave a magic wand and you will have no more problems in understanding, no more problems in producing words. Treatment needs to be individually tailored for each individual's problems. So it's not that there is a single aphasia treatment. You need to tailor the treatment for this person's writing problems, specific writing problems, this person's specific problems with producing words. And treatment can be required for many years and continues to be effective many years after the onset of aphasia. While some people with aphasia do get back to a very good level of functioning, many people don't get back to normal. And even those who get back to a level where most people wouldn't notice that they have a problem, they report that they still don't feel that they're quite the way they used to be. Nevertheless, it is possible to live successfully with aphasia. People adapt to their new self. They come to terms with their new self. They develop friendships and a life around that new self. It isn't the person that they once were, but nevertheless, people are able to adapt. So aphasia is a significant problem. It causes a big re-evaluation of your sense of self and has a large impact on family and friends. And therefore it's something that's really important that we understand in the community. Because one of the biggest issues for people with aphasia is that very few people know about it, know what it is. So that's one of the aims of this lecture, is for you to understand what aphasia is and the impact of it, so that if you come across people with aphasia, you will have some more insight into it.